Hello, everybody. Welcome to our CakeFu Master Series. Today we have Nicholas Lodge with us. He is a super talented cake decorator. He is just world-renowned, and we are so excited to have Nicholas here today. So, hi, Nicholas.
Hi, everybody. So glad you all managed to fit me into your busy schedule, so it's good to be here.
Wonderful. Well, we're glad that you fit us into your busy schedule as well. I know that, especially once you start, you're doing cakes, you're teaching classes, you're making videos, you're writing books, all kinds of things. So we understand that you are a very busy person.
Well, thank you.
So,
it's fun, though. It's fun.
It is. Isn't it nice to have a career that we just love?
Wonderful, yes. Every day is different. So,
absolutely. All right, well, let's get started with a little bit of about you. We'll let everybody know, who you are and what brought you to where you are. So tell us about how you got started into cake decorating.
Well, my mom was a really good cook, so I used to enjoy baking with my mother, and so then it really was. Initially, I was planning on becoming a chef, and then actually through my study in culinary, we did obviously desserts, including pastries, and so of course then I decided I wanted to specialize more in pastries and desserts, and then through changing to a different course, which is more baking and pastry, when I actually did pastry arts, I obviously fell in love with the actual cake part of it, so that's become then my specialty field. So really it's a transition throughout the culinary arts and ending up in cake decorating as my part of pastry.
Wonderful.
And that's where how I really got into it, so sort of a long time ago.
That's great. That's wonderful. Our mothers have a huge effect on what we choose to do in life, aren't they?
Exactly. And my grandmother too, as well. My grandmother was, one of my grandmothers was very artistic. She used to do a lot of like knitting and crocheting and lace making. And so, that I think helped with a lot of my, when I do string work, it's I think a lot of my patience comes from my grandmother as well. So I think our parents and grandparents play a very vital role in our skill levels and what we have the tolerance to be able to do. So.
Oh, that's wonderful, wonderful. What a great tribute to mothers and grandmothers, especially so close to Mother's Day.
Yeah.
All right, and so so you went to culinary school and had the opportunity to make some amazing cakes for some amazing people. You want to talk about some of the amazing cakes that you have had the chance to make?
Yeah, so when I lived in the UK, I worked with a team on making actually one of the official cakes for Charles and Diana's wedding, and then obviously when Prince Harry came along, I actually did his baby shower christening cake, and then also the Queen Mother's 80th birthday cake. So those are sort of like three cakes I made for members of the royal family, and of course that was a great honor to be able to do that. Unfortunately, they don't pay, but it's it's obviously a privilege to do that, and it was obviously was a very exciting time in my life to be able to be part of that. So
yeah. Well, I think anybody would be, very excited and about doing something so huge. So that's great.
Yes,
and also. Oh, what's that?
No,
go ahead.
It obviously is it was a huge cake. It's actually the cake because when Charles and Diana got married, they actually had 25 cakes because they needed enough cake to send out all over the world. Because in England, fruit cake is actually, if you RSVP, you're not going to be at the wedding, they actually will send you cake. So they needed, I believe it was 26,000 pieces of cake to send out to all the consulates and embassies all over the world, so they need a lot of cake. So
wow, that is amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Yeah, that is a tradition I've heard of in the UK, and that would be a fun tradition to bring over to the United States, I think.
It would, but actually I just had a class here in Atlanta, a royal icing class, so I talked to my students about that, but in the UK you can buy a little box in the Hallmark store, which actually, because in England the fruit cake is only 3 inches high, and then you actually serve it's a 1 by 1 finger. So if you had, like, say, relatives in Scotland and you were getting married in London, you would put these 2 little pieces, fingers of fruitcake with marzipan and royal icing in this box and pop a stamp on it, put it in the mailbox, and then it arrives at your relatives in Scotland, and then they would have a cup of tea or something a little stronger and then sort of celebrate your wedding. But I think, unfortunately, like, our softer cakes here in the United States, I can't see UPS or FedEx making a good job of delivering that.
Probably not. You do have a point there. And especially the style of cake that we make here, where it's not necessarily a pound, or a fruit cake. It's more of a, the softer, less dense kind of cakes. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So you have written a whole bunch of books. On our blog, we have actually written down some of the books that you've written. But how did you get involved in writing books? How did you come about that?
I think a lot of it, I was very lucky being in the right place at the right time, because when I actually was 17 is when I wrote my first book. So,
oh, wow.
Actually, yeah, so it was sort of quite amazing that, so I actually, yes, on my 17th, when I was 17, I started working on my first book. So actually I was approached by a publisher because I was at college during the time, and I had won several awards at competitions in the UK. And so the publisher, Mayhurst, who did a lot of the early cake decorating books, they sort of found me and asked me whether I'd be interested to write a book, and that's really how it all happened. And then I wrote several books with Mayhurst, who then was bought out by Murdoch, an Australian publisher. And then I did books for Lex, which was a company that did, like, personal planners and day planners, and then also some books for other publishers as well. So yeah, actually, by the time I was like 24, I'd actually written like 7 books. So it was pretty much one after the other, and so that was a pretty exciting time. And obviously, to be able to sort of looking back on that, I was very privileged to be able to be in the right place at the right time and have that opportunity given to me. So.
Wow, that's great. That is wonderful. Are you still writing books, or are you mostly moving on to DVDs and classes online? Or
I am doing some sort of smaller booklets. We self-publish some books now, some smaller type of books, and but it's mainly sort of our own instructional DVDs. And obviously, with working with Craftsy, the online forum seems to be very sort of popular at the moment. So I'm actually going to be doing 2 new classes for Craftsy this December. So I'm busy planning those as well. So, but I do a lot of writing for different publications, professional magazines and things like Dessert Professional, and of course also cake magazines like American Cake Decorating. I'm often doing articles for them, and then also magazines overseas as well. So it keeps me pretty busy writing and doing things like that. But I really enjoy that, so it's fun. So.
That's wonderful, wonderful. Well, we really enjoy the Craftsy classes here. We think they're very good quality and wonderful classes. So, and for those of you listening in, that's what our giveaway is going to be today. We're going to be giving away one of Nicholas's classes. So that will be really fun. Also, let's see, you have been inducted into the ISIS Hall of Fame. You've judged on Food Network Challenge. You just so many top pastry chef and top cake artist in Dessert Professional magazine. Just some amazing honors that you have received, and it just shows how amazing of an artist you are. So it's wonderful.
Thank you. That's right.
Yeah. And okay, so you are a spokesperson for Albert Ooster Imports, and you work with them on their rolled fondant line. And so we're actually going to be sharing with you guys pictures of some of the fondant cakes that are made with their fondant, and talk a little bit about that. And then also, I guess, the ways that you are doing certain things. So we will go ahead and move on to the training portion. Oh, I forgot to show you guys this. These are the 2 Craftsy classes that you have to offer so far. And you said you're coming up with a couple more in December?
Yes, I have actually. I'm doing 2 classes in December. So, and we're still working on ideas for those, but they will actually be shot in December. So they probably won't be out until January, February 2014. So.
Oh, okay, great. Wonderful classes. It's always nice to be able to see these and be able to, see right there how you're doing everything. It'll definitely improve your flower making. So, all right, we'll go ahead and move on to the training portion, and I'll just let you take it over from here, Nicholas, and you can talk about everything that you wanted to share.
Of course. So, just first of all about Craftsy, the whole forum, the platform is wonderful because it's very interactive because you can post, obviously, photographs to show myself and also your other people who are enrolled in the class, but also to be able to ask questions. So you can actually post questions and, several times a day. I have nearly 7,000 students within my 2 Craftsy classes, so it keeps me pretty busy. But I, answer questions several times a day. So if you're having any drama in the kitchen and if something's not going quite right, you don't understand something, that's a great way because you can actually just post the question and then I'll answer in the best way I can. But it just really makes it very interactive, and I think sort of some of you that maybe don't have a lot of connection with other cake decorators in more remote areas of the U.S. or the world, enables you to be able to sort of keep up with what people are doing and how people are using the flowers. So I hope you'll enjoy the Craftsy classes, those of you who haven't signed up for those yet, and they're a great way to learn.
That's wonderful. So that makes it even more worth the money that you're going to pay for the class because then you know that you have someone there to ask questions if you ever get stumped. So that's very valuable right there. So you were going to say something?
Well, I was going to so you'd like me to talk a little bit about my work with Albaduster and some of those things?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Yes. So I've been working with Albaduster Imports. They're a Swiss-based company. They're in Gaithersburg, and they have several warehouses throughout the U.S. But I went on board with them several years ago as a spokesperson for their line of rolled fondant. And they produce a Swiss-made rolled fondant called Massa. And there are several members of the Massa family. And but the really exciting part is that because of my love of fashion and interior design, each year I've been able to bring out a trend color. So the one that's actually on your screen at the moment, that is the 2013 trend color this year, which is peony pink. So this cake really focuses on a lot of hot trends. Ombre, which is huge at the moment. Ombre is a graduated color palette. So you can see here, this is being done in a little more of an untraditional way. A lot of times when you see ombre, you will see it more as like strips of rolled fondant. And here I actually have used the peony petals. So on the top of the cake, there is a gum paste peony, which actually is the gum paste peony that I show in my Craftsy class. And then I actually use the medium-sized peony petals. So there's actually 147 peony petals on the cake. So just a few. And those are actually done in ombre style with 50-50 paste, which is half gum paste and half fondant. Or what I've done is I've modified the fondant. That means the darker pink at the bottom is the actual peony pink, which is a new trend color this year. And then I actually modified that by adding Tylose powder and vegetable shortening to it. And then I did the first layer of petals. And then each layer I just added another 50 grams, approximately 2 ounces of white modified fondant to that. So each layer becomes subsequently lighter and lighter coming to the top. But this is obviously a very hot style at the moment. And then also the cake showcases another thing that's very trendy at the moment, which is tall cakes. So this is actually an 8x8. So this is an 8-inch high base tier. So you're going to see a lot of these like oversized cakes where you have these taller tiers. And a combination of tall and shallow. So the cake is 8 inches high, the base cake, and then the top cake is 5 inches by 3 inches high. But also the other thing the cake really focuses on is trend color, peony pink or hot pink color. And gray is a huge color this year for weddings, and a lot of these darker grays. So actually the cake stand came from Target, and the sort of like a dark, almost like an elephant gray color, so it has a little bit of brown to it. But a lot of dark gray and pink being used this year. So this is a cake that I just finished.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. In fact, I have to add in, after you sent me these pictures, I was asked to do a cake for somebody that I did just this weekend, and it was pink and gray, and I just thought, oh, how interesting. I thought that was very, very, I wouldn't say coincidental, because it's true. It is a very trendy color set right now, the pinks and grays. And so I just have to add in here that I wish that I had ordered this massa fondant for that, because pink and a really good hot pink is so hard to get. It is very challenging. So this is definitely worth it.
But what's also nice with it, the sort of bottom of the cake is the actual color the rolled fondant comes in, and but it's also it's a very stable color, so it doesn't fade, which is really nice. And then of course you can mix it so the round, the taller cake was actually covered with a very pale pink, where I actually took like a bite and then I added like a little bit of the pink to it to make a pale pink. Mm-hmm. So you can pretty much take it right down to a soft baby pink for something like a baby shower, or use it obviously full strength. So
that's great.
Well, thank you.
And massa fondant is honestly, that's the fondant of choice for me. I know that everybody has their preferences, but I've always been partial to the massa fondant.
Well, it's a little softer. I mean, because it's made in Switzerland, it's made for using more on an entremet style cake, which is a cake built in rings, more of a European style cake, which is really a soft cake. So the great thing about the massa, a lot of people, when they're used to using some of the other brands of fondant, it is soft, but the great thing about it is it stays soft on the cake. So when you cover a cake on Thursday, when your client or bride cuts the cake on Saturday, the rolled fondant is still nice and soft on the cake. Mm-hmm. But the nice thing about it from a point of view of for a beginner, it has a lot of workability, and you have plenty of time. You're not rolling it out and it's already cracked and crazed and dry. You have plenty of time. So covering unusual shape cakes, or like the tall cakes I'm shown here, it gives you plenty of time to be able to sort of work with the product. And so that's where I find, as an instructor, teaching with the product, my beginners, especially in the rolled fondant class, they have much more time to master it before it starts to dry. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very true. And also, you do have to think about the fact that if you do need it on the stiffer side, you can always add Tylose, or you can, mix in some gum paste, or, that type of a thing. So.
Or even a little extra powdered sugar, because you can even just work a little powdered sugar into it. It will tighten it up as well, if it is a little soft. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so this is a close-up picture of the ruffly part that you used the peony cutter. Did you actually vein each and every one of them, or did you?
Yes. So they actually were rolled out through the pasta machine. I use a pasta machine, a KitchenAid pasta machine for all my rolling out. I rolled out number 4 thickness, and then I cut out the 21 petals I needed for each layer, and then I put some of them into a plastic flap, and then I just pressed them onto one side of a silicone peony veiner with a cosmetic sponge, and then ruffled the edge with a Dresden tool on the coated side of the pad, and then turn the pad over to the soft side, and then work from the outside to the inside. So you create this very sort of soft, like almost like a feathery type of effect. And you can see here the sort of the ombre concept. But the way I found was best to do the ombre is, as I explained, I start off with the darker color, and then do my first layer of petals, and then I add white to that to do then my next layer of petals, because ultimately you don't end up wasting a lot of product. You just end up with the lighter color at the end. And but there are many ways. I mean, Maggie Austin, who's a close friend, and she was a student at the French pastry school, a chef instructor. Maggie Austin has a wonderful Craftsy class on frills and fondant frills. Maggie prepares her different colors, her ombre colors to start off with, which is another way you can do that. And so there are many, many ways you can go about this ombre concept.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen Maggie's class on Craftsy also, and that is just a really I love the ruffles.
It's beautiful, yeah. That's very much Maggie's signature style. So she does a really nice job with that, and that's very much become her sort of signature style with her cakes. But ombre, just to show you, this was done with a peony petal, but you can, like actually on a recent issue of American Cake Decorating was one done with rose petals, so you could obviously change out. But I thought it was fun because I had a peony on the top to use the peony petal to sort of carry the whole peony theme through the whole concept.
That's a very beautiful peony too. Very beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
This is taught in your Craftsy class, right?
It is, and that's actually the small peony, because during the Craftsy class, obviously I show all the different stages of peony, because like that peony just has 5 wide petals on it, but I do peonies that are much larger that have up to 25 or 30 wide petals. So on my Craftsy class, you go right through from this smaller peony, because this is only a 5-inch cake, so we obviously wouldn't want like an 8-inch peony on top of a little 5-inch cake. So
yeah, that's very true.
And this one was done when it actually was colored with the Albadusta peony pink in the white gum paste, but very, very soft. I just made this a really, really pale pink, and then I used 2 of my signature dusting powders, which is American Beauty. I did like just little highlights, accent pink on the edge, and then some prairie green, which is a nice soft green on the peony to finish off the top. And you can see how I've taken the color. I matched the color to the cake pedestal. The cake pedestal I found in Target, and it was a really nice color, and it has like sort of almost like a rib design, like a grosgrain on the edge of it. So then I used actually a PME ribbed roller, so I actually rolled out some gum paste and cut it, textured it, and then cut it with a multi-ribbon cutter. And then the P on the top of the cake is actually a patchwork cutter. It's like a large letter, which is sort of nice sort of classic style. So just sort of tied in the colors from the cake stand up to the top of the cake to give a nice balance.
Very nice, very nice. Oh, and there's a close-up of the peony right there.
Yes.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Well, thank you. So actually, in this case, I'm actually a week, in like 10 days' time, but for Albadusta, I do a series of road shows. So I'm actually doing a road show, not next Monday, but the Monday after in Orlando at the Ritz-Carlton in Orlando, and then I'll be in New York, I'll be in Chicago, I'll be in Gaithersburg, I'll be in Maui, I'll be in Honolulu, potentially maybe LA as well, but doing road shows. So actually during the road show, I will be actually showing how I did a lot of the steps of this cake, the ombre cake with the peonies on the top of it, and also other confections like the little cake pops and lollipops and cookies and other things in the same color palette. But I will be posting that on my Facebook page, so once we know the dates and confirm. So this just shows some little mini cakes. These are little small petite cakes. So these are actually like a little 2-tier cake. It's actually a 2-inch and a 1-inch cake. And then the round cake, that's actually the biggest cake. That's a 3-inch cake. And those cake boards are actually made from gum paste. So I just rolled out some of the Albadusta gum paste and cut out with round cookie cutters. This is a great way when you're doing a little mini cake, because then you can just use the cake board as well. And it's sort of a fun way to do it's a bit like an oversized petit four. And the little small square cake is done like a little gift package, and then the back round cake is just piped with some buttercream with a little sugar pearl on the top of it.
I love the idea of the base being made out of gum paste. I made a little smash cake for a birthday cake this last weekend, and that would have been really nice to have just a little edible base so that you don't have to the baby can eat everything.
Well,
that's very clever.
To find little, sometimes small cake boards are difficult, but so you can see there on that little square one, that's sort of perfect with little. So that's just an Antico nesting cookie cutter set with a serrated edge. And you can also, of course, just you could even do them out of rolled fondant if you just leave them a couple of days to dry. They will dry hard enough to roll out some fondant, cut them out, put them on some like fun foam or some parchment paper to dry. And then, you can just cover your cake and then attach it with a little bit of melted chocolate. And this is sort of a cute way to be able to sort of make a little small cake board.
That's nice. The one in the back, that's round, I see that it's got some texture to it. Do you want to tell us how you did that?
That's actually
texture?
that's actually done with an acrylic textured rolling pin. It's actually a peony design, so it actually is like more of an oriental peony with the stamens in the middle. But I actually use that also on the top of the round cake. You see how there's like an insert of a paler pink on the round cake. So I just rolled out the fondant. And once I'd rolled out the fondant, I smoothed it with a fondant smoother and then rolled across with a textured roller and then draped it onto the cake. But when I do that, I don't use fondant smoothers because you will basically erase the design. I just rolled it, and I just usually use some cotton gloves or some vinyl gloves and just gently press it onto the cake. But if your fondant's already perfectly smooth, so that's why you smooth it with a fondant smoother, texture it, and then lay it on the top, and then you won't lose the design. Because if you start using fondant smoothers, obviously you're going to erase the design off the fondant. But it just gives textural detail. This is also a very popular year for texture. You're going to see a lot of texture used in interior design and in fashion, and so again, that's a big thing. So different textures are a really fun way to add interest to a cake as well.
Perfect. It looks beautiful. All of them look very beautiful.
Well, thank you.
All right. And so here's some cookies.
Yes.
I love the flower ones. Those are beautiful.
Well, thank you. So those are just done actually with a large, it's like actually a 4-inch blossom cutter, just like a gum paste flower cutter, just a very simple blossom shape. So I made the sugar cookie in that color, in that size, and then I used the peony pink. So there, because a cookie is obviously something you want to be able to eat, so that's just actually modified fondant. So I took the peony pink, and then the very pale pink one is just obviously white fondant with a little bit of peony pink added to it. And I just modified it by adding a little bit of Tylose powder. When I modify things, I mean, the formula is very easy. It's 1-1-1 if you're working in pounds. 1 pound of fondant, 1 teaspoon of Tylose, 1 teaspoon of shortening. And so you take basically 1 pound of fondant, you would add 1 teaspoon of Tylose powder or CMC, and 1 teaspoon of vegetable shortening. You mix it together, and what that does is it changes the consistency of the fondant. So when I do things like a Tiffany box, I would use that, modify some of the fondant for the lid. But it means here it's not going to get too hard, so when you eat it, it's going to be softer. And usually when you modify fondant, you want to leave it about 15 to 20 minutes. But if you wanted a smaller quantity, you could do half a pound, half a teaspoon, or a quarter of a pound, a quarter of a teaspoon, quarter of a teaspoon. And it's a very, very sort of easy way to change the. And of course, you're not changing the color. So if you're wanting to do like the wedding cake in peony pink, and then you wanted to do some other confections for something like a candy bar or a dessert table, it means you can use the same color, but you can change the consistency of the fondant. And then in the middle of this, I used a little silicone mold. This is a small pearl silicone mold where I just press some white fondant into there and then press that onto the top. And then the other cookies I just done again with the peony textured roller. And then once I had the paste rolled out, I cut out with the crinkled cookie cutter edge and then laid it on top of the sugar cookie. And generally I attach the what I refer to as a veneer, which is the sugar shell on top, with a little piping gel, or you can use apricot glaze, you could use nappage, which is used for glazing a fruit tart, or you could use corn syrup, and that sticks it on. And then I just laid a few little small pearls, little tiny 3-millimeter sugar pearls on top, and then just pressed them in gently with a spatula so they became embedded into the center so they wouldn't come loose.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
They
are very beautiful, and that would be such a nice, wedding favor for, giving to your guests as a beautiful pink peony cookie.
Thank you.
All right.
And then we come on to lollipops. Lollipops are huge. I mean, basically anything on a stick, like obviously a lot of food trucks and a lot of food fairs and state fairs, people, butter on a stick and fried Kool-Aid on a stick and, all different types of meats on stick. But that also ties over into our area of pastry. So confections on sticks are huge. So things like cake pops and things. So here we have a lollipop. This is actually done as a chocolate lollipop. Generally I do sugar lollipops or chocolate lollipops. So this was actually created with white chocolate, and then I actually colored it with a pink powder color. I actually used the Albedos to also do a peony pink powder color and also a gel color, which is great because it means if you wanted to make French macaron in a peony pink color, you could color your macaron base with the peony pink gel color to match the cake. But I just used a little bit of the peony pink luster dust actually in the white chocolate just to tint it a pale chocolate, and then obviously used a normal sucker mold with a sucker stick, and then I decorated those with like veneers of fondant, and I just embossed them. Obviously the peony, I've used the P for peony, but you could use obviously any monogram depending on what your client wanted. And then again, you can see the central one has the peony textured roller used and then cut out with a round cookie cutter. And again, they would just be attached with a little bit of piping gel or, as a corn syrup works fine on a lollipop. But these would also be really fun for favors because you could put them in a nice little acetate bag with a nice maybe gray ribbon or darker pink ribbon. It would be really a nice fun thing to give for a guest to take home.
Wonderful. These pops that you said they're chocolate, is it just a melted chocolate, poured chocolate? Or
yes, like
a
melted chocolate. I mean, I use the Albedo white chocolate, which actually they have too. Obviously they have a lot of really good couvertures, but the white chocolate, obviously, because it's not really chocolate because it doesn't contain cocoa butter. So, but you could also use, like, for example, Merkins, like in our retail store here, we use Merkins, which is a high-end coating chocolate. Obviously, some people use Wilton chocolate. So really, you can, of course, the other way to do that as well, Amelia, is you could actually take white chocolate and then you can also buy, like, pink chocolate little coins, and then you could put maybe, like, to a 1 pound package of white chocolate, you could add maybe 10 or 12 of the pink coins. That's another way you can tint chocolate. Because when you color chocolate, you have to use either a powder color or an oil-based color, especially made for chocolate. Because if you add, like, say, Americolor or Chef Master or Wilton gel colors or paste colors, they contain glycerin, and glycerin actually will make the chocolate seize and become thick. So you always color chocolate with a special color for chocolate, or say a powder color. But using, like, the chocolate coins in other colors, like a bright pink, you can add to white chocolate, and then it will make it pale pink. Is another way to go.
Wonderful, perfect. What a fun setup here. And then cupcakes. Oh, and I love this one that has the color dusted onto it, the one on the bottom.
Yeah, so the cupcakes are, there's like the one, so that's just pink fondant, which is rolled out. Again, when I do cupcakes, when you're eating those, you obviously wouldn't want to use gum paste because it would dry too hard. So generally, this is actually just straight fondant. So I just rolled out the master pink or white with pink added to it. And then that's actually just embossed with a tappet, FMM tappet called Fruit and Flowers. So I embossed butterflies on there. And I just sort of highlighted them with a little bit of the luster dust, the peony pink luster. And then the one that's got the ruffle on, that is done a little bit like Maggie Austin's Ombre frill technique, where I just took some modified pale pink fondant, cut out a strip and put it onto a pad, and then use a balling tool and then textured it and just basically frilled the edge of it and just rolled it up like a jelly roll and made almost like a bit like a carnation in the center. And again, you can see the one like I took from the cookies, where I rolled out the pink paste and textured it with the peony roller, and then I've cut it out with a round cookie cutter and then laid it over the top. And these cupcakes were, cored, so I used generally like a KitchenAid apple corer. There you can buy like what's called cupcake corers, but I find they're not really very strong. So I prefer just to use like a heavy duty, like a KitchenAid apple corer, and take the core out of my cupcake, and then I fill the cupcake, and then I cap the top of it off with buttercream. Make it as smooth as you can, and then these are really just like a real thin layer of fondant. You wouldn't want to put the fondant on too thick, so this is actually less than 1/8 of an inch thick, this rolled fondant on top of the buttercream. And then you can see there the one with the butterflies has got like a luster dust on, and then the one with the peonies on. So I just tried, really just showing how you can make all these confections So the sort of theme was obviously peonies, and so I tried to sort of use different sort of variations on that basic peony concept, which is what a lot of clients and brides do. When a bride often has a wedding, they'll have a theme, so they may carry the theme of, like owls are very popular at the moment, so a lot of brides are using owls. And then another thing that's very popular is like the honeybee theme, so like honeybees and beehives and that sort of shape of honeycomb. So there's a lot of, a lot of people will take that whole theme of the wedding throughout the wedding. So this just shows how you can take the theme of the wedding cake, like the peony, and then you can then use that on other little confections and favors that people maybe will take home.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I do have a lot of questions already, and I've been reading through them as we go. But there are a lot of people that are asking about the rolling mat that you used, or the rolling pin that you used for the peony.
Okay.
Texture.
It is something. Yeah, it's actually called the peony texture mat, peony texture rolling pin. And we do, because actually, if you go to like Albert Ooster's website, which is www.aui, so Albert Ooster Imports at AUI Swiss, so SWISS.com, so AUISwiss.com. We have done actually a kit, which is a kit that we have done for the roadshow, which actually that has like the peony cutter, the peony mat. I mean, it has the textured rolling pin. It has the butterfly and peony tappet. So it has several different things I use on that. But we also have all of those things on our website separately as well. So it's a peony textured rolling pin. So that if you go to nicholaslodge.com, then you can find all of these things individually as well. But if you go to AUISwiss.com, you can see the kit, and then you can actually pull that up, and it sort of tells you what's in the kit. Because when I do the road shows, a lot of the pastry chefs and people attending want to be able to sort of create the things in their restaurant or resort hotel. So a lot of times, so we've started doing kits. So last year when I did the Fifth Avenue Blue collection, which is based on the iconic Tiffany color, we did a sort of a kit for the cake that I created last year. And so it's sort of, but it's a nice design, and it's sort of very contemporary as well. So you of course could use it on lots of different types of things, like on the cake board or on cookies or cupcakes, like I've shown.
Mhm. And one thing that I really do like about masa is that, for example, with these cupcakes that you want to roll out the fondant really thin, it does roll out very thin and very easily, and I love that you can get a nice thin fondant, and it works really well being thin also. It's not hard to work with once it is thin. So, and then we have more cupcakes. Is that?
Yeah, so these are like little mini cupcakes, which again are a little bit of a pain to make, but they're adorable.
They are adorable.
But these are little mini cupcakes. So again, I sort of took the whole peony concept. So actually the ones at the back, the pale pink, the white, and the darker pink one, that is just done with Swiss meringue buttercream. So I've actually just piped that with a 104 tip, and then I obviously tinted with the peony pink gel color into the buttercream. But you could also use a high ratio shortening based buttercream or Crisco based buttercream, whichever you prefer. And then I just put a little small sugar pearl in the center, but I wanted it to sort of have the look of almost like a peony. And then the little mini cupcakes on the front, those were just sort of iced in a traditional way. So just buttercream was put over the surface of the little cupcake, and then I just had the little small peonies. Those are actually done with tappets, which is a FMM product. I call them actually whack-its because you have to whack them more than tap them. But the tappets are, and that's a set called Fruit and Flowers. And it has like some different like little bunch of grapes and a strawberry, but there's this like almost like a peony type of flower on it. There's a daisy, and so I just roll out. Those are actually done with modified fondant, so I just roll that out, number 5 on the pasta machine, and go along and in a circular movement, and then whack them. They come out in the cutter, and then you just pop them onto the top of the buttercream. So those are just more of a traditional But again, you have to think about when you're doing a cupcake or a cookie or anything, people actually eating it. And as you said, Amelia, like the master stays very soft. So like on your cookies, that's not going to get hard. That laminate piece, that veneer is not going to get hard like a lot of brands of fondant would. So it does stay nice and soft. And plus it tastes yummy as well. So
it does.
That's the big thing to take into consideration.
Definitely. I can't, I don't think I'll ever be convinced that any other fondant is as good as Mess as far as taste and the texture. I really love it. I do. So, all right. And then we've got some little mini
so these are what I call like cake box pops. So I did these first of all last year actually as a Tiffany box. So if you imagine that this is in Tiffany blue color, so it looks like a little Tiffany ring box.
Oh,
so these are actually made. Yes, so these are made out of brownies. So what I actually do is if you let's say have a recipe for an 8-inch square cake pan of brownies, you just divide the mixture between the batter between 2 cake pans. So what you're baking is sort of about a 1/2-inch thick brownie, and then I usually use like a chocolate ganache-based buttercream by adding melted chocolate or ganache base to a buttercream. It means once it's refrigerated, it's going to set up like a truffle would. So I add some ganache base or some melted chocolate or some buttercream, and then I spread that on one of the sheet parts of the brownie and then put the second part on top. And then these are cut out with actually the Tico nesting square cookie cutter set. I use the smallest size, which is about 1.25 inches. So I actually cut that out. So you're going to make this little sort of square brownie. And then what I do is I dip a 6-inch sucker stick into melted chocolate, like you would make a cake pop, and insert that into the bottom, or what will be the top of as you're looking at it, the top of the brownie. And then I spread chocolate onto the top part that's towards me, melted chocolate. And then I would put them in the cooler, into the refrigerator. And then what I do is take them out, and then I just mask the 4 sides and the top with some buttercream or some glaze, and I roll out the fondant. And I've used white and pale pink and darker pink there. And then because the bottom is chocolate, it's going to set like almost a cake board, so that makes it very, very stable. And then I just roll out some modified fondant or 50-50 paste, and I cut out either with the fettuccine linguine attachment, which is on the KitchenAid pasta machine, or using a Gem No. 3 strip cutter, and I just cut little strips, and I make little gum paste bows. And then the more like the gift bows there are just done with 1.25-inch pieces of paste, and you just sort of fold them over into a little loop, and you just would make 8 of them. And then you can see the pale pink center, those pearls are actually 6-lets. That's something a lot of people are using now on cupcakes and round bases of cakes, because it's like a round M&M. And 6-lets you can now buy in all different colors. So I use the pale pink 6-let in the middle of that, and so it means it's a very yummy treat on a stick. So this is a nice decadent chocolate brownie with chocolate ganache buttercream and covered with a thin layer of fondant and then a little decoration. So these are what I call my cake box pops. I'm actually going to be teaching those at a cake camp, which is going to be held in your neck of in Henderson.
Yeah.
And Las Vegas in July, and you can go to Cake Camp's website. And but I'm actually doing a 1-day class where I'll be teaching a lot of these things, but doing them in the Tiffany blue color. So I will be actually teaching these little cake box pops, and we'll be doing cookies and cupcakes and other things with, as I said, and on the website you can see photographs of them in the Tiffany blue color. But these are something I came up with last year, but they're really fun and very popular, and a lot of my students have done them in all different color combinations for the holidays, in red and green, and for graduations and baby showers, and sort of just a really fun. Because I find cake pops they're a little bit tedious, and so this is really just a spin on a classic cake pop, but it's basically like an oversized petit four on a stick, so it sort of has but people really like these.
I love the concept of this. This is absolutely amazing. I love that it's so detailed, but also so you're not using anything on this that wouldn't just taste absolutely decadent. Sounds perfect.
Well, thank you.
All right. Oh, and there's another picture of the same little pops.
Yes, I think this is good.
Oh, I need to go and make some of these now. This sounds so impressive. And look, there's a whole setup right there. You know, the tables of desserts is so popular right now. So this would be, you know, the perfect setup with using, you know, one major color theme and just doing the whole thing. I love that.
Yes, I mean, and you know, so many people now are doing this sort of candy tables and dessert tables and things. So this is actually for the shoot for our producer for their, but you can see the side of actually the cake box popped there on the styrofoam round, but you see the lollipops in front of the lollipops, so you can see how it looks conceptually from the side. And then you just mark like with a plastic scraper or a knife, you can then mark the sort of the lid of the box. So it just looks like a little small ring box, but it's sort of, they're very, very stable, but, you know, having the melted chocolate on the underneath, that's really what gives it stability. And so it's a very stable product to make, and when people love them, and they taste really yummy too, which is important. So.
Mm-hmm. I like the idea of the chocolate base to it. I really do like that. I think some people sometimes have a problem with it just sliding right through. So
Exactly.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. Well, we have a whole lot of questions, and we'll try and get to as many of them as we can. So we'll be started right here with, well, this is a very interesting question. We'll start with an interesting one for you. Lindsay Munier says, was there ever a time where you doubted whether you would be able to be successful in this field?
Yes, I think there are always doubts. I mean, I think sometimes you have to have confidence in yourself. I mean, everybody has to start somewhere. I have students who sometimes say to me, well, you know, I don't think I'm going to be good. But, I mean, it takes time. I mean, it takes practice as well. But don't ever doubt yourself. I mean, every cake you make is going to have flaws. I tell my students, you know, there is no such thing as a perfect cake. I mean, that's where you become good as a sugar artist, is being able to cover your mistakes. That's where you stick a little flower or butterfly, you know. But so don't ever doubt yourself. You're not good enough. I mean, but it does take a little time. You know, sometimes you have to practice things. But I think the most complicated thing about business is very multifaceted. But you also need to find a comfort zone of like mediums you enjoy working with. If you don't like sculpting cakes, then don't offer sculpted cakes. I mean, don't put yourself in a stressful position of doing something you don't enjoy, because then you're going to get burnt out, and then in 2 or 3 years you're going to say, I've had enough of this. So just really do what you enjoy doing, and then the rest will just come naturally.
Absolutely. I agree completely with that. All right. We have Pam Galty says, I already purchased your flower class, among others, and now I feel my skill level is good enough to make for bakeries, but want to do it from home. So far, the bakeries I've contacted aren't receptive. Do you see a market for this, or should I find a different way to market?
There is a huge, actually I have several students here in Atlanta. There is a huge market for making handmade sugar flowers, because yes, you can buy pre-made sugar flowers, but as we all know, they're very thick and they're not very sometimes not very attractive. I mean, some of them are okay, but a lot of my students work with pastry chefs at high-end hotels like Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons, you know, W Hotels, where especially when a pastry chef is doing you know, $6,000 to $9,000 wedding cake, that maybe the client has brought a photograph of this cake with lots of flowers on it. They don't have the skill, or mostly it's not the skill, but it's the time to do that in-house. But definitely, I mean, bakeries I think is a way, but the bakery has a limited market, because typically a lot of times when somebody goes to a bakery for a cake, it's going to not be such a high-end cake. But I mean, if you can get in with even like a cake designer, and go and see them and take some examples of your work. And because, again, a lot of cake designers don't have time to make sometimes handmade sugar flowers, but if they know that you can offer that service to them, But the advantage of making flowers is that, you know, I have several students. One of my students she's a busy mom with 2 young children, but she can easily make sugar flowers, you know, when she puts the babies down for her nap or children down for a nap. It's something that she can just sort of multitask, you know, whereas actually making a cake is a little bit more difficult if you have young ones running around. And she can fit that in with her schedule. And the nice thing also with sugar flowers is you can make them months in advance. So during the winter time when maybe you're not as busy with cakes or people aren't using, you can stockpile a lot of your basic flowers like your ivy leaves, your stephanotis and things. And then when the chef wants particular types of flowers, you can then make those as needed. But it can be a very successful business, and it's also very lucrative as well.
That's a really good concept. You know, I've heard of a lot of people, you know, they will either make, you know, cake toppers and sell cake toppers, or, you know, or of course gum paste flowers, things like that, but not do a whole cake, because that's what their passion is in the, you know, the sculpting work or the flower work, or, you know, that type of a thing. And I know I've had people come to me and ask me if I would, you know, make flowers for them. And these are small, you know, home-based cake businesses that are asking, you know, and so I would suggest, you know, not just bakeries, but like you said, Nicholas, hotels, you know, or home-based cake decorators, maybe open up an Etsy shop online, you know, the Etsy online, and maybe sell. You'd have to really get down your shipping if you wanted to do that. But yeah, make sure they're packaged very, very carefully.
Yes.
But you know, those are some great ideas.
Yeah, I mean, it's
All
sort
right.
of, the thing is just to sort of finish up about that. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, if you, let's say you charge a pastry chef $200 for the sugar flowers for the topper for a wedding cake, then the hotel charges the client $400. That's no problem. I mean, as long as you get out of it what you want. Generally, you know, I tell my students, don't sort of undersell yourself. I mean, because because basically the hotel or whoever you're working with is just going to put that extra charge onto the client. So always make sure you charge what you want to get out of it. And but it can have a very successful, very lucrative business just making sugar flowers if you don't enjoy making cakes. This is it's like a bit like a craft, but it's a craft that's going to make you a lot of money, or potentially could make you a lot of money. So good luck, everybody, with that.
Yes, definitely. All right. This is another advice question. It says, from all of your cake experiences, what is the most important advice you would give to novice cake decorators?
I think to a novice cake decorator, you just have to, I mean, don't run before you can walk. I mean, you need to start off with, the really important thing is to start off with a good cake. You know, it doesn't matter how fabulous your cake looks. If it doesn't taste good, people aren't going to come back to you and you know, get repeat orders. So the really important thing is to start off with the classic important things, you know, a good cake, how to fill a cake, also the construction of the cake. A lot of people don't know how to dowel cakes properly, how to set up a cake properly. Those are all very, very important. But then also, as you learn new techniques, add them to your repertoire. Don't feel you have to do all of these cakes that you see in magazines and on the internet, because, you know, everybody has to start somewhere, and you start off offering your clients what you have a comfort zone with. Because, again, just like getting burnt out doing things you don't want to do, you don't want to put yourself in that stress position of saying to a client, oh, yes, I can do that, and then you realize you basically can't do that. And some things take practicing, like, you know, stenciling techniques takes practice. So you practice it first on some dummy cakes and then on the real cake. That's what you do to friends and family who are not generally paying you for the cake, you know, that have no right to tell you what the cake should look like. That's where you try out things. And then once you feel confident, then you can start offering that to a client. But it's just a question of, but I mean, fundamental things like learning how to pipe properly, how to do a lot of the basic things, that's really important fundamental knowledge.
I absolutely agree with that. I think a lot of people, like you said, run before they walk. You know, I think the real basics, the piping is really important. You know, and of course, knowing how to bake a cake properly. That's the whole reason why people order cake is for it to taste good, right?
That's right.
All right, we have a question from Kimberly Martin now. She says, I noticed that you mentioned using Tylose powder with the fondant. Does Tylose and fondant medium work better than just regular gum paste or as a medium on its own?
Well, generally, the main reason why I would use it is because when I'm trying to match the color, like for example, when I, let's say, do a contemporary wedding cake with black on, I might use black fondant for one of the tiers of the cake, and then I might want to make some, say, black polka dots or black ribbon around one of the tiers. So that's where I would modify it. If by adding the Tylose to the fondant, it means it changes the structure of it, but it means you don't change the color. So that means within one wedding cake, you could have, say, black fondant, you could have black modified fondant, which would be like you'd use for ribbons or polka dots and things. And then if you wanted to make even black flowers, you can actually just add twice the amount of Tylose. So the recipe I spoke about earlier, you just would use twice the amount of Tylose to that, and that would actually make it more comparable to gum paste. So that's generally what I use, because the advantage of if you can buy fondant in black or you can buy fondant in different colors, it's sometimes easier than starting off with white paste and then trying to color it. Also, the other thing you have to remember is the different manufacturers, when you buy, say, colored pink rolled fondant, most manufacturers are not going to sell you the color they used. So the problem is if you're trying to sort of make the piping the same, it becomes very complicated to try and get the color to match. So that's where I use a lot of fondant techniques. But a lot of things I've shown you and spoken about, you could, of course, totally do with gum paste. But just remember, gum paste dries a lot harder. So generally when you're using it on, especially like cookies or stuff like that, it's going to get a little bit hard. So that's why I prefer to use fondant or modified fondant.
Okay, great. Let's see. Linda Quintaville asks, how do you know what trend will be in with a little advance time? Like, do you go by fashion books, clothes, things in that area?
Yes, totally. I mean, I'm very lucky because I travel a lot. I travel an immense amount. So, like when I go to Paris a lot and, Tokyo and things. So I'm always looking at what the trends are. But even like this year, like if you go into a sort of a store like Crate and Barrel, or you go into Target, or just those type of stores in a mall or where you live, you're going to sort of see trends in fashion and interior design. And then as far as like in weddings, I mean, looking at the Brides magazine, like later this fall, they'll start having what's going to be the sort of trends in colors and flowers, what the trend flower is going to be next year. And that will be sort of usually in more bridal magazines. But like there is also, there's a Pantone color of the year. So this year, for example, the Pantone color of the year is emerald. But that's not a color that a lot of brides are going to use. It's more of a sort of, it is a popular color. But, generally, as I said, there's going to be trend colors, and then there's going to be sort of like Pantone colors. But just generally speaking, just watching what's happening in a department store or, in magazines and things like that, you're going to start to see what the trends are for the next year.
Perfect. Wonderful. Okay, we'll ask just a couple more questions. We have so many questions. All right. Someone was asking about the bow effect on the brownies. You said you rolled them out with a pasta roller. Can you walk them through that effect one more time?
So what I do is that we use just like a pasta machine. So you generally go through the pasta machine on number 4 thickness. And when you buy like the KitchenAid pasta machine, it's usually a triple set I recommend my students buy. There's a fettuccine attachment, which is going to give you like 1/4-inch wide noodles, so you make for like fettuccine. And so you then change out to that, and then you put the paste through that, so you're going to get these 1/4-inch wide ribbons. And then you just brush the back of them with a little watered-down piping gel, where I take piping gel and water, equal quantities, just brush a little bit of that on the back of it, and then you lay that across the top of the package. But also you can, if you didn't have a pasta machine, you can use like gem cutters, like we sell on our website, gem number 3 strip cutter, and that is about a 1/4-inch wide gem strip cutter, which will cut actually like several strips at one time, so you can just cut that out. So there are several options you could use for that, but I use that a lot for those little small bows and ribbons.
Wonderful. Okay, and then someone's asking about your ganache-based buttercream that you mentioned. Could you talk them through that? So you use a Swiss meringue, is that what you said?
Yeah, I usually use
Buttercream?
the Swiss meringue buttercream, but you could use this on any type of butter. But you can either take like a ganache base, like you use to make like when you make ganache with heavy cream and chocolate, and you can just let that cool a little bit, and then you can just add some of that to like vanilla buttercream. You can also take, for example, you could just take some cocoa powder into white buttercream, and then also some melted chocolate. But by adding either a ganache-based or a chocolate, melted chocolate to the buttercream, what it means is then when you put the brownie in the refrigerator, what it's going to do is going to firm up. Because the Swiss meringue buttercream is a lot softer, and so having melted chocolate in it in the form of either melted chocolate added with cocoa powder or a ganache base, which is chocolate and heavy cream added to the buttercream, what it means is once you refrigerate the cake, before you cut out the squares, and once you've got the lollipop stick in there, it means it's going to make a firmer foundation. So that's what typically I prefer to use when I'm doing my brownie pops.
Perfect. So either adding chocolate, melted chocolate, or ganache to a buttercream base.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I'm just putting just chocolate in, I normally add some cocoa powder, like Dutch processed cocoa powder, to it as well. To taste, but that is how I usually make chocolate buttercream when I'm doing especially things like cupcakes or, as I said, like the cake pops and things like that.
Perfect. All right. There's a lot of people asking about classes. Do you have a list of your upcoming classes? I know I usually put up a list on our trainings, and I failed to do that, and I apologize. So is there a place where they can go to see a list of all of the upcoming classes?
So if you go to my website, which is www.nicholaslodge, so just my name, nicholaslodge.com, you can click on class schedule. We have, our online shopping, but also if you go onto my Facebook page, I have over 10,000 people on my Facebook page. There's a Chef Nicholas Lodge. If you just do a search for Chef Nicholas Lodge, I do post things on Facebook as well. So like I spoke about the AUI demonstrations, like in Orlando, New York, and different cities. I will post all that information to Facebook. And you can also, if you go to on the website, you can actually click for an electronic newsletter. And so you can sign up for an electronic newsletter, and we do blast emails like usually about every week or so of upcoming classes. So, like for example, next week we have a 5-day Ultimate Gum Paste Sugar Flour class, and then we have a 3-day Rolled Fondant class the following week. So we do blast emails about the classes, but you can see the classes for the rest of the year here in Atlanta on the class schedule. But as I said, if you sign up for our electronic newsletter or go into Facebook, that is a way of getting more sort of current, up-to-date information, especially on my out-of-town classes like Cake Camp or, the Albert Ooster events and things like that.
Perfect. All right. So make sure you head over to his website. Also, I will blog about this on CakeFu. So if you guys go later on today, I'll put up a picture of the kit that's available that Nicholas talked about, links to his websites, links to I guess NASA or whatever we decide to add into that. So make sure you go check that out.
Thank you.